Picture this. It's July 1996. A police officer pulls over a speeding car on Sunset Boulevard. Behind the wheel sits a man who was once Hollywood's golden boy, now barely recognizable, emaciated, incoherent, and carrying heroin, cocaine, and an unloaded .357 Magnum. This isn't just another celebrity arrest story. This is the moment Robert Downey Jr. hit absolute rock bottom. Welcome back to Light After Dark, where we explore the incredible transformation journeys of those who face their darkest moments and emerged not just surviving, but thriving. Today, we're diving deep into one of Hollywood's most extraordinary comeback stories, a tale of addiction, imprisonment, redemption, and ultimately becoming the highest-paid actor in the world. Robert John Downey Jr. was born on April 4, 1965, in Manhattan, into what seemed like an artistic paradise. His father, Robert Downey Sr., was an underground filmmaker, and his mother, Elsie Ann, was an actress. But beneath the creative surface lurked a darkness that would shape Robert's entire life. Here's where the story takes a heartbreaking turn that most people don't know. At just 6 years old, Robert's father gave him his first taste of marijuana. Senior later admitted this was the worst mistake of his life, calling it criminal behavior. But the damage was done. What should have been childhood innocence became the first step on a path toward decades of addiction. Despite this tragic beginning, Robert showed extraordinary talent. He dropped out of high school to pursue acting, landing his breakthrough role in Less Than Zero in 1987, where, ironically, he played a wealthy young man struggling with addiction. Life imitating art, or was art imitating his life? By the early 90s, Robert Downey Jr. was Hollywood royalty. His performance as Charlie Chaplin in 1992 earned him an Oscar nomination. Critics called him a genius. Studios fought to cast him. But behind the charm and talent, the addiction that began at age 6 was consuming him from the inside out. The mid-90s marked the beginning of Robert's very public downward spiral. We're talking about a man who had everything: talent, success, money, a beautiful family, and watched it all crumble because of his addiction to drugs and alcohol. June 23, 1996. That's when the world first saw the true extent of Robert's problem. Police found him unconscious in a neighbor's bed in Malibu, high on heroin, cocaine, and Valium. But that July arrest I mentioned, that was just the beginning of a nightmare that would last years. Let me paint you the picture of how far he fell. This wasn't just recreational drug use. Robert was smoking crack cocaine, shooting heroin, and drinking heavily. He would disappear for days, leaving his wife Deborah Falconer terrified and his young son Indio wondering where Daddy had gone. Between 1996 and 2001, Robert was arrested multiple times. Each mugshot tells a story. You can literally see the life draining from his eyes with each arrest. There's 1996, looking disheveled but still somewhat himself. Then 1999, gaunt and hollow-eyed. By 2000, he looked like a ghost of the man who once commanded Hollywood. The most heartbreaking moment came during one of his court appearances. Standing before the judge, Robert broke down completely and said, "It's like I have a shotgun in my mouth and my fingers on the trigger, and I like the taste of the gunmetal." This wasn't an act. This was a man acknowledging he was slowly killing himself and felt powerless to stop. In 1999, Robert violated his probation and was sentenced to 3 years in state prison. California Institution for Men in Chino became his home. Here's a man who once stayed in 5-star hotels, now sleeping on a concrete slab, eating prison food, and wearing orange jumpsuits. But here's what's remarkable, and this is where our story of transformation truly begins. Prison might have saved his life. Something profound happened to Robert during those months behind bars. Stripped of everything, his career, his freedom, his identity as a movie star, he was forced to confront the person he'd become. And for the first time in decades, he didn't have drugs or alcohol to numb the pain. Robert later described prison as the worst and the best thing that could have happened. The worst because of the obvious reasons: the loss of dignity, the separation from his son, the complete destruction of his career. But the best because it forced him to face his demons without any escape routes. In his cell, Robert began practicing yoga and meditation. He started reading philosophy and spirituality books. He began to understand that his addiction wasn't just about drugs, it was about pain, trauma, and a desperate attempt to fill a void that had existed since childhood. When Robert was released in August 2000, the world was watching. Would this be another false start? Another cycle of promises followed by relapse? The answer came quickly, and it wasn't what anyone hoped for. Within a year, he was arrested again for drug possession. The headline screamed, "Robert Downey Jr., hopeless." Studios blacklisted him. Insurance companies wouldn't cover his films. His career was officially over. But every transformation story needs a catalyst, and Robert's came in the form of a woman named Susan Levin, a film producer who saw beyond the headlines and the addiction to the man underneath. Susan didn't just believe in Robert, she gave him an ultimatum: get clean, stay clean, or lose her forever. This wasn't enabling or codependency. This was tough love from someone who saw his potential for greatness. More importantly, she helped him understand something crucial. He couldn't get sober for anyone else. Not for his career, not for his son, not even for her. He had to do it for himself. Robert entered treatment again, but this time was different. This time, he wasn't going through the motions. He embraced Wing Chun Kung Fu, which became a form of moving meditation for him. He deepened his yoga practice. He worked with therapists to address the childhood trauma that had set his addiction in motion. Most importantly, he began to rebuild his relationship with his son, Indio, apologizing not just with words, but with consistent, sober actions. By 2003, Robert had been clean for over a year, but Hollywood wasn't ready to forgive. No major studio would hire him. He was uninsurable. His career seemed permanently over. Enter Mel Gibson. Yes, that Mel Gibson who took a massive risk and cast Robert in The Singing Detective in 2003. Gibson personally paid for Robert's insurance bond because no company would cover him. Slowly, methodically, Robert began rebuilding his career with smaller films like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and Zodiac. Directors who worked with him reported the same thing. This wasn't the same erratic, unreliable actor of the 90s. This was a professional, dedicated performer who showed up early, knew his lines, and brought incredible depth to his roles. But the real test came in 2008 when Marvel Studios approached him about playing Tony Stark in Iron Man. Here's the beautiful irony. Marvel cast Robert as Tony Stark partly because of his troubled past, not in spite of it. They wanted someone who could bring authentic depth to a character who was also a genius, struggling with personal demons. Robert famously improvised one of the most iconic lines in cinematic history: "I am Iron Man." But those words carry deeper meaning when you understand his journey. He wasn't just accepting a superhero role, he was declaring himself transformed, reborn, ready to be a symbol of redemption rather than destruction. The numbers tell the story of one of the greatest comebacks in entertainment history. Iron Man grossed over $585 million worldwide. Robert went from uninsurable to commanding $50 million per film. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, anchored by his Tony Stark, has generated over $28 billion in box office revenue. But here's what matters more than the money. Robert Downey Jr. became a symbol of hope for anyone struggling with addiction. Today's Robert Downey Jr. is unrecognizable from the broken man in those mugshots. He married Susan in 2005, and they've built a beautiful family together with 2 children, Exton and Avery. He's maintained his sobriety for over 2 decades now, but perhaps most importantly, he's used his platform to help others. He's spoken openly about addiction, breaking the stigma that keeps people from seeking help. He's funded treatment centers and supported organizations that help people in recovery, When his own son Indio struggled with addiction, the cycle nearly repeating itself, Robert handled it with the wisdom only someone who's walked that path could possess. He got his son help, supported his recovery, and proved that the patterns of addiction don't have to continue across generations. In 2020, Robert received a full pardon from California Governor Jerry Brown for his drug convictions. But the real redemption isn't legal. It's personal. It's the man who shows up for his family every day, who treats his colleagues with respect and professionalism, who uses his influence to lift others up rather than tear them down. So what can we learn from Robert Downey Jr.'s incredible transformation? First, that rock bottom can be a foundation to build upon. Those darkest moments in prison, facing the possibility of losing everything forever, became the catalyst for real change. Second, that accountability matters. Robert's recovery wasn't just about getting clean, it was about making amends, taking responsibility for the hurt he'd caused, and consistently proving through actions that he'd changed. Third, that professional success means nothing without personal fulfillment. Robert could have been the biggest movie star in the world, but if he'd remained addicted, he would have remained miserable. True success meant becoming the father, husband, and friend he wanted to be. And finally, that our past doesn't define our future. Every expert said Robert Downey Jr. was finished, washed up, hopeless. But he proved that with genuine commitment to change, incredible support systems, and a willingness to do the hard work of recovery, anyone can transform their life. Today, when Robert Downey Jr. looks in the mirror, he doesn't see the broken addict from those mugshots. He sees a father who's present for his children's lives, a husband who's built a strong, loving marriage, an actor who's inspired millions through iconic roles, a man who's proven that redemption isn't just possible, it's powerful. His journey reminds us that our darkest moments don't have to define us. They can transform us. Sometimes we have to lose everything to find ourselves. Sometimes we have to break completely to rebuild into something stronger. Robert Downey Jr.'s story isn't just about a Hollywood comeback. It's about the incredible resilience of the human spirit. It's about the power of second chances, third chances, and the courage to keep fighting for the person you want to become. If you or someone you know is struggling with addiction, please know that help is available. Recovery is possible. Transformation is possible. Your story doesn't have to end with your darkest chapter. Thanks for joining us on Light After Dark. If Robert's story inspired you, please like this video and share it with someone who might need to hear this message of hope. Subscribe for more incredible transformation stories, and remember, no matter how dark things get, there's always the possibility of light after dark.